Good morning, everybody, and thanks so much for being here today on August 26th, recognized across our nation as Women's Equality Day. Before I get into my remarks on Women's Equality Day, I want to recognize a real milestone for a wonderful woman this week in our community, and that is for Elmer Lucille Allen, who passed a real milestone with being 91 years young this week. That's what a beautiful woman looks like right there. So in a moment, we're going to share details about a great Women's Equality Day program planned for our city tomorrow. And I want to thank all the partners working on this program, including the city's Office for Women, Lean Into Louisville, and others you'll hear about in a moment, our committee members, some of them behind us, others in front of us here in the room. But first, I have to note something kind of obvious. There's not a Men's Equality Day. And there's a good reason for that. Women hold up at least half the sky, but for too long, continuing well into today, women have been held back in the rights department, in the earnings department, in the equality department, though they and their allies have fought, marched, activated, agitated, legislated, mobilized, and organized, and voted for equality and positive change. Today, August 26th, and during tomorrow's event, we lift all that up, the struggles and the aspirations, because Women's Equality Day represents a call to action that is needed now more than ever. When first recognized in 1971, it commemorated the day the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution was ratified. Yet, as with almost everything else in America, this is a partial anniversary, driven by race, because women of color didn't have their right to vote truly protected until 1965 with the passage of the Voting Rights Act. Let's also remember that 1971 was pre-Roe America, so activism and action to protect women in our country came after that. And this year's observation of Women's Equality Day is the first since the U.S. Supreme Court going against the vast opinion of the majority of Americans overturned the historic Roe versus Wade precedent earlier this summer. For almost 50 years, Roe affirmed a woman's right to make her own health care choices, and specifically to choose an abortion throughout the country. No more, and the fallout is already being felt, the possible repercussions affecting every aspect of women's lives. So it was feared for so long by over 70% of Americans is now a reality, and we've moved monumentally backwards. It's the first time in 50 years that women, in effect, have been told they are lesser than, a lesser class than men. And I do not understand how 100% of Americans cannot stand up against this injustice. And overturning it, because of where it's at in the Supreme Court, is going to be difficult. But it has to come through the ballot box, with people saying this has gone too far. And thankfully, we're seeing some evidence already in some of the elections that have taken place since then. But there is a monumental amount of work to be done to overturn this injustice here as we talk about women's equality. In this context, there couldn't be a better time for Louisville's women and their allies in the fight for equality to gather, to celebrate past victories, yes, but more importantly, to network for strength in greater numbers and to strategize for future wins. The theme of Saturday's Women's Equality program is Lift Every Voice, referring to the Black National Anthem, calling for a world in which all women's voices, especially those of marginalized women, are heard, respected, and heeded. During my 3 terms in office, my administration has worked hard to hear, respect, and heed the voices of women in our city. Earlier this year, I elevated and relocated the city's Office for Women to reside within our Office of Equity to amplify its work. My team and I have championed policy changes and programs to improve the lives of some of the most vulnerable women in our community, from eviction prevention to education to decreasing maternal and child morbidity through the Healthy Babies Louisville initiative. In 2021, I signed an ordinance providing paid parental leave for Metro employees welcoming a child by birth or adoption. And this year I signed an ordinance providing paid leave for Metro employees who are victims of domestic violence and other crimes. All this because I know, and we know, that even as we celebrate Women's Equality Day, we obviously are not there yet. In fact, sadly, I think this year represents a huge step backwards. So there is still a lot of hearing and heeding that needs to be done. And on that point, I'm honored to invite some of the great women in Louisville up here to speak. First, a councilwoman who, along with her allies on the council, have formed a women's caucus in this past year that has already done a flurry of really outstanding work, for which I'm really grateful. So please welcome Councilwoman Paula McCraney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? Just because I walk like I have oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like moons, like suns, with the certainty of tides, just like hopes springing high, still I'll rise. Did you want me to be broken? Bowed heads, lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakening of my soulful cries. Does my sassiness offend you? Don't you take it awful hard, 'cause I laugh, like I've got gold mines digging in my own backyard. Do you shoot me with your words? You may cut me with your eyes. You may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like life, I'll rise. Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of huts of history shame I rise. Up from a past that's rooted in pain I rise. I'm a black ocean, leaping wide, welling and swelling, I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak miraculously clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave. I am the hope and the dream of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise. This poem is one of my favorites of Maya Angelou. Thank you. As you know, most of Maya's work, Miss Angelou, with respect, was inspired by the struggles experienced by African American women in the long history of oppression and discrimination in America. And Still I Rise begins and ends with the affirmations of strength and the joy of living. The title of the poem, Still I Rise, is a proclamation against a society that tries to dominate a woman's voice. Through this poem, Miss Angelou tries to break through the shackles of domination and raises her voice to say that she and her people are no longer mute. They have the voice to proclaim their rights. Similar to Black women in the suffrage movement did when they were told that they couldn't march with the white suffragists. Just like the women did in that day, we can still rise today. We can still find our place in America and join the forces with all the women who fight for equal justice. As we proclaim today as Women's Equality Day, we must remember that although we have come a long way, we still have a long ways to go towards equity. So today, we should be reminded to support women's struggles for equality throughout every day. From the glass ceilings in our workplaces, to the evolving roles in the home, from opportunities on the sports field, to female leadership in the C-suite, from the images representing women in videos and magazines, to the way women view themselves, from empowering young mothers to supporting women preparing to retire, from encouraging greater female involvement in the science and technology fields, to promoting women's campaigns for public office and leadership in government institutions. And as federal politicians and judges have shown us in 2022, women must fight for their right to make critical decisions about their bodies despite being impregnated while being violated against her will or at risk of dying. The struggle to maintain our voice and the right to decide for ourselves is real. The struggle is real. So as long as women are underrepresented, misrepresented, and silenced in these places and other spaces in our society, there will be still work to do, but still will rise. So on this 26th day of August, 2022, Women's Equality Day, we say her name: Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Susan B. Anthony, Lucretia Mott, Alice Paul, Carrie Chapman Catt, Sojourner Truth, Ida B. Wells, Harriet Truman, Harriet Tubman, Mary McLeod Bethune, Shirley Chisholm, Barbara Jordan, Rosa Parks, and all the other women of yesteryear who marched so diligently and so proudly to proclaim their voice in society for equal rights. Happy Women's Equality Day.
Really good. Great job. Yeah. Well, thank you, Councilwoman. That was extraordinary. Well done. Next up is Dawn Wilson. Dawn is the Education Chair for our Human Relations Commission. She's a very active citizen, helps Louisville in so many different ways. Please welcome Dawn Wilson.
Thank you. As the mayor says, I am an education chair for the Louisville Metro Human Relations Commission. But it's a little bit more than that. I've been in this building several times. And I remember in the late 90s being in this building, meeting with Jerry Abramson and members of the council, because we were trying to pass the fairness ordinance. And everywhere we went, people was like, well, we passed it, but those people, the T part, you need to get rid of them. And so we kept coming and kept coming. And I remember meeting with a member of the staff. And I was with Lisa Guntman, who's now over at U of L at the Pride Center. She's the director. And while we were talking, Lisa said, and as a girl, when I was a girl, and the person looked back, said, what? And then I said, and when I was a guy, and they go, what? Wait, hold on, stop. They wasn't seeing us as who we truly were. They were seeing us as what they had been told to see us. Unfortunately, these stereotypes and things have continued to the point that in some areas, our cisgendered sisters have turned and said, we don't want you involved because they might do something and keep us from moving forward. Lift every voice. See, if you have a chorus and you're missing a part, the song sounds wrong, right? Sounds off. We are the allies. We've been through the fights. Many of us have lobbied on Capitol Hills for our only right just to exist. And as someone who was in those fights, I can tell you that there were a lot of lesbian families. There were a lot of trans families that were there for their kids. Today, we are seeing a rollback. They're trying to take us back to the 50s. I have news for you. I'm not going back to the 50s because I wasn't born in the 50s. I was born in the 60s, and in the 60s, we raised a little bit more than just, say, Sam Hades. You just heard a stirring reading of our rise. The trans community, especially the trans feminine community, the trans masculine community, has been rising because we had to fight our own internals. We had to fight those who said they were for us. We had to stand when nobody else would stand for us. What you people don't talk about in history is that Stonewall was started by black trans women. Imagine that, Marsha P. Johnson. But you know, that fight is going to continue. Right now, we are seeing that there are people in this country in leadership that are passing bills wanting to infringe upon the right of somebody's body. They've done it with abortion. They've done it with Roe v. Wade. And now they're doing it to trans kids, saying you cannot have gender-affirming surgery. You don't get surgery. It's care. Get it right, German. Just get it right. It is gender-affirming care. And they said, well, we don't care. Just like they said with every other thing that deals with something feminine. So today, I am a part of the chorus that is going to be out there representing those trans youth who right now feel silenced. Those trans folk that I know and don't know that feel afraid. We are here on this Women's Equality Day to say we are women, and the same thing you've done to every cisgender woman, you've done to us. And guess what? We're on the battlefield, and we're going to reverse this. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. We appreciate your compassion, your courage, your care. Gretchen Hunt is our director for our Office of Women, has done an incredible job for us in so many different ways, impacting so many lives in such a positive way in our community for both women and men. So please welcome Gretchen Hunt.
Thank you to Mayor Fisher, and thank you to these incredible, powerful women gathered behind me, all the women on the Planning Committee for Women's Equality Day who brought this to fruition. And I just want to take a moment to say that there's a powerful, powerful shift that happens when women take up space. When women take up space physically, defining their own boundaries, on their bodily autonomy, their rights. It's also a powerful thing because it shows us the possibility that we squish and that we tamp down, and just the growth and the power that could really empower this city to be an even greater city and impact our community. And we must ensure that that space is taken up by women. So that's precisely what we will be doing Saturday, August 27th, when we gather at the Filson Historical Society at 10 a.m. The event is free and open to the public, and we hope that men, women, non-binary folks, youth, adults, seniors, folks will all gather there because these issues are not women's issues. These are issues of justice. They are issues of the entire community. They are issues of the entire well-being. Just as Mayor Fisher talked about, things like paid leave impact everyone. They don't just impact women. And when women's rights and voices suffer, the entire community suffers. So this is a call to action. We will be joined by Marilyn Jackson of the Muhammad Ali Center as our MC. Professor Enid Trucios-Haynes of the Brandeis School of Law will give us an update on the constitutional rights of women right now and what is at stake. Dawn Wilson, you've just heard a taste of her incredible story of justice and advocacy. We'll share more of that. Taylor Ryan of Change Today, Change Tomorrow will talk about the struggles facing us right now to reach all women and all communities and make sure that there is equity. Last but not least, we will be joined by the Real Young Prodigies. And if you don't know them already, you need to come because they are an incredible performance group, but they are also a call to action to all of us of what we need to do to be civically engaged. They have championed here in Metro Hall the Crown Act. They're still working on the Crown Act in Frankfurt to pass that legislation. And even though they're not old enough to vote yet, they are gathering and working and raising up their voices. At the end of the day, this event is about the right to vote, and so it's not just a celebration. It's not coffee and listening to speakers. It is a call to action. It is gathering so that people recognize how important the right to vote is, that it's more important now than perhaps ever, and that people need to act. So we will have plenty of spots where you can register to vote, and you can be made aware of organizations uplifting women and how you can gather. So join us tomorrow, Saturday, August 27th at the Filson Historical Society, and we hope to see you all there. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody, for coming here today. Now to remark on tomorrow's day is Women's Equality Day. We have a proclamation to honor that. So, Elmer Lucille Allen, would you accept this, please, on behalf of all of the women of Louisville? This is the City of Louisville honoring Women's Equality Day 2022 in recognition of the strength, resilience, courage, brilliance, and achievements of women's unfinished American journey. For now and the future, we support women in a continuing push toward equality in every aspect of life, and join a call to action to work together to bring about equity and equality to all in a nation whose DNA demands it. The tragic loss of equal health care rights for women demonstrates the urgency and need to fight to restore that right and to continue this righteous push. Our city proudly celebrates this day as Women's Equality Day 2022.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's step over here so we get a picture.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions from the media? Well, thank you all for covering this here today. Let's have a good turnout tomorrow. Thank you.